Cartilaginous fish such as sharks and rays are some of the oldest animals on our planet. Having evolved in Earth's oceans some 439 million years ago, these animals are more ancient than both trees and vertebrate life on land. Today, they make up an important set of animals in their respective ecosystems, acting as scavengers, filter feeders, and sometimes apex predators. It won't come as a surprise, then, that over the millions of years in which cartilaginous fish have existed, evolution has produced some rather peculiar representatives. Today, we are traveling back to the later periods of the Paleozoic era, to a time when cartilaginous fishes were continuing to establish themselves as a diverse group of animals, having radiated into all sorts of shapes and sizes. Specifically, we will be zoning in on two of the most unusual apex predators of the Carboniferous and Permian periods, Edestus and Helicoprion. These unusual relatives of modern-day chimeras are often referred to as whorl-toothed sharks, on account of their bizarre chainsaw-like tooth blades situated on their lower jaw. Over time, these sharks have undergone many reconstructive changes in the eyes of science, and it has taken a long time to understand exactly what these creatures were and how they interacted with their environment. Despite this, many questions are left unanswered. Join us then as we dive into the pelagic ocean waters of the late Paleozoic to meet the bizarre chainsaw sharks that ruled the waves over 250 million years ago. Helicoprion and Edestus are the most famous and recognizable members of the order Eugenodontiformes, a surprisingly poorly understood group of cartilaginous fishes that spanned from the early Carboniferous to the early Triassic. The later relatives of these fish would in fact survive the catastrophic end Permian extinction, but would not persist long into the Mesozoic, becoming extinct when large marine reptiles such as ichthyosaurs usurped their positions as the ocean's top predators. Many eugenodonts were indeed apex predators, and the two genera we are going to cover today are essentially the representatives of their own families within this order. While some eugenodonts are represented by two fragmentary remains to reliably place them in a genus or family, those that have been described are typically assigned to either the family Helicarionidae or Edestidae. Helicoprion fossils are extremely widespread, having been found in early Permian deposits everywhere from Canada and the northern United States, down to Mexico and into the Old World. Fossil hunters in Russia, Japan, Australia, Kazakhstan, China, Norway, and Laos all have the chance of encountering the unique spiral saw, fossils of this fish if they look in the right places. Edestus is slightly less widespread, but their jaw whorls have still been uncovered in the wide late Carboniferous range of the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom. The first thing to know about both of these fish is that they were very large, perhaps even the largest marine animals of their time, if current estimates prove accurate. Edestus was thought to measure over 6.5 meters, or 22 feet in length, while Helicoprion was even larger, reaching over 7.5 meters, or 25 feet in length. As it stands, it is hard for scientists to accurately reconstruct the true size of these animals, as both are known only from skull material. These size estimates have been made by comparing the body proportions of related animals to paint an educated picture of these creatures. While their size is important and helps to create an image of these fish, by far the most notable feature of their remains has proven to be their teeth. Helicoprion is the most famous of the eugenodonts and is primarily known for its bizarre, spiraling whorl of teeth. Starting with a small, hooked tooth in the center of the whorl, the teeth progressively grow larger and more triangular in shape, each of which is serrated and perfectly adapted for processing flesh. The largest of Helicoprion's teeth could reach around 10 centimeters, or just under 4 inches in length. While Helicoprion had only one whorl fixated on its lower jaw, Edestus had two, one on each jaw. Edestus's teeth were not set in a spiral fashion, but were instead outwardly curved from the tip of the fish's jaws, with up to 12 teeth per whorl. Both fish needed to continuously replace the teeth in their whorls, and it is believed that Edestus did this by slowly pushing its teeth forwards as they grew. When they reached the tip of the whorl, they would be ejected, with the second oldest tooth taking its place, and so on. Over Edestus's lifetime, it may have had as many as 40 teeth come and go for each whorl, while Helicoprion's single whorl was packed with around 150. Only the largest 10 were functional and visible at any given time, as the fish continuously shifted the position of its teeth over the course of its life. With the exception of their unique skulls, it is believed that, in life, these fish would have resembled many modern pelagic predatory fish, such as mackerel sharks, swordfishes, and tuna. Just like these animals, they would have had tapering, streamlined bodies that ended in a tall caudal fin, split into two in a fork shape. Like modern sharks, they would have evolved the characteristic triangular dorsal fin and were likely capable of extreme bursts of speed. With their size and dental weaponry, they were without a doubt some of the most fearsome and well-equipped predators in the Paleozoic oceans. Despite the fact that Helicoprion is one of the most famous prehistoric sharks in the fossil record, it was actually Edestus that was described first, in 1856, by American paleontologist Joseph Leidy. While the remains he studied are very fragmentary, they are thought to have been discovered in Muskogee County, Oklahoma, but their exact location may have been lost to the archives. While this initial find was indeed a tooth whorl, this was not obvious to early generations of paleontologists who were comparing the eugenodonts to modern cartilaginous fish. The first explanation, offered by the accomplished and infamous English paleontologist Richard Owen, was that the whorl was a fin spine, perhaps used for defensive purposes. It wasn't until 1912 when Oliver Perry Hay, another American paleontologist, recognized Edestus's tooth whorls for what they were, after studying a specimen unearthed from a coal mine in Lehi, Iowa. It was Richard Owen who first established the genus Edestus in 1861, and since then 4 species have been added to it: Edestus vorax minor, heinrichi, and Triceriatus. By the time Edestus's tooth whorls had been described, Helicoprion was already known by science, but its fossils proved to be even more confusing to those studying the fish in the late 1800s. Helicoprion became known to science when 15 teeth from a fragment of a whorl were discovered along a tributary of the Gascoyne River in Western Australia. In 1886, they were brought to English paleontologist Henry Woodward, who actually placed it within the genus Edestus, naming it Edestus davisi. Later, in 1899, Russian geologist Alexander Karpinsky established the genus Helicoprion after studying the tooth whorls of Helicoprion bessonovae, which led him to reconsider Edestus davisi. Both remains were united under the same genus, and Helicoprion was established as a visibly different fish to Edestus going forward. Helicoprion and Edestus have both undergone a wide range of artistic reconstructions following their discovery. The tooth whorls of these bizarre fish remain some of the most unusual fossils on record, and paleoartists have grappled with their purpose and appearance since the 1800s. While the two genera were firmly established by 1899, there was still much ongoing debate as to what exactly these fish were, which led to some weird and wonderful reconstructions. Joseph Leidy, while recognizing that the teeth belonged to a cartilaginous fish, believed that Edestus's whorls were those of a petalodont, a group of Chimera relatives that resembled rays or frogfishes of the modern day. John Strong Newberry, an American geologist, suggested that the teeth may have been the defensive spines of a stingray-like animal, while the idea that they were pectoral fin spines has been floating around since the start of the 1900s. The peculiar artistic reconstructions started with Alexander Karpinski following his creation of the genus Helicoprion. He first depicted the fish as having a whorl projecting from the upper jaw, which coiled backwards towards the head. Rather than simply just being teeth, he theorized that Helicoprion could use its whorl as a means of offense and defense against other large fish in the Permian oceans. Paleontologist Charles Eastman would later review the depiction, suggesting instead that, if this was an offensive tool, perhaps the whorl was present on the fish's body or fins rather than in its mouth. They would be explored as features of Helicoprion's dorsal and pectoral fins, but none of these depictions would hold up over time. Around the mid-1900s, paleontologists began to generally accept that Helicoprion's tooth whorl was situated on its lower jaw, but its exact position was still debated. Some depictions show the whorl curling down from the lower jaw, with the entire whorl exposed outside of Helicoprion's mouth. This became the norm for some time, and before recent reconstructions showing the whorl inside the fish's mouth became commonplace, this would be the standard way artists would portray Helicoprion in books and the media. Today, Helicoprion is understood to have had its whorl situated on the lower jaw, with most of the spiral concealed under soft tissue. Only a small proportion of the whorl would be visible at any given time, and when the fish closed its mouth, the whorl would fit into a deep pocket aligned longitudinally on the upper jaw. In addition to the teeth on the whorl, Helicoprion's mouth was lined with a series of wide teeth that would help hold and process its prey. Given the two very different dentary systems in these fish, it makes sense that they employed two different methods of feeding in life. Without multiple rows of chomping teeth like a modern great white, Helicoprion was a particularly specialized hunter of soft-bodied animals. In fact, it is believed to have been adapted to hunting cephalopods, which were numerous in the ancient oceans of the Permian period. When Helicoprion sighted its prey, it could home in with great power and speed. Striking at the right angle, it likely used the teeth at the front of the whorl to hook and spear prey, before manipulating its jaw to drag its prey into its mouth. Once situated at the top of the whorl, Helicoprion could secure its catch in place to efficiently kill and slash through the flesh, working its sharp spiral against the roof of its mouth to effectively saw into it. Its prey would then be moved to the back of the fish's mouth to be pushed down the gullet where it could be digested. Helicoprion is believed to have avoided hard-shelled or bony prey items that could create resistance against the whorl, perhaps slipping out of its jaws if a stronghold could not be attained. Edestus may have taken a more aggressive approach to dispatching its prey, while it too exclusively ate soft-bodied animals such as cephalopods. It appears to have been more direct in its feeding, slashing the prey with its whorls with swift, undulating movements from the head. By slashing in an up and down motion, Edestus could guarantee a kill before its food was even in its mouth, immobilizing and possibly killing its catch outright before consuming it. Once the prey was in Edestus's mouth, it would have used its lower tooth whorl in opposition to the top, slashing and cutting at its food before pushing it along to its throat, using the movements of its jaw. Good modern-day comparisons to Helicoprion and Edestus are not sharks, but whales. Sperm whales, as well as their dwarf and pygmy cousins, are well adapted to diving deep into the dark, open waters of our world in pursuit of pelagic squid species. Whether or not Helicoprion and Edestus dived deep into the abyssal waters of the Paleozoic to obtain food is unknown, but both genera would have been capable of consuming rather sizable cephalopods. Given the power that was likely exerted by these large fish, and the fact they were targeting soft-bodied prey, they likely would have had an advantage over many other predators in the oceans, who may not have been able to find a suitable way around the masses of tentacles and arms working against them as they fed. Helicoprion and Edestus were by no means the only members of their order, and several other genera have been uncovered across the world that are just as unusual as the two fish we are covering today. Caseodus, a member of the Eugenodont family Chaetodontidae, was one of the hardy survivors of the end Permian mass extinction. It survived well into the early Triassic period, finally becoming extinct around 247 million years ago. This may have been due to its smaller size and adaptability. Unlike Edestus and Helicoprion, this genus reached a maximum length of around 1.5 meters, or just under 5 feet. Others, such as Romeridus, existed across much smaller time frames, living for around a 3 million year period in the late Carboniferous. This is one of the few Eugenodontiformes whose fossil record has preserved their full body outline and skin, allowing scientists to understand exactly what these fish look like in life. Visible on Romeridus specimens are the phosphatized remains of bony, ossified cartilage on the fish's jaws and body, which would have reinforced and protected it in life. While Romeridus and Cassiodus were slightly more typical looking when compared to Edestus and Helicoprion, other eugenodonts were absolutely not. Ornithoprion, a Cassiodontid, is one of the strangest fish in the order, featuring an oddly bird-like skull which projected into a long, thin, spear-like structure on the lower jaw. This structure was, in fact, a series of fused bony scales which may have been used to pierce or sift through prey closer to the seabed. While the exact lifestyle of this animal is unknown, it inhabited much shallower waters than Helicoprion and Edestus, which has led some to believe it may have been durophagous, breaking into the hard shells of mollusks and crustacean-like creatures to obtain the soft flesh within. Others, such as the much larger Sarcoprion, whose name literally translates to flesh sore in English, may have been adapted to open water pursuit predation. While it still hunted soft-bodied animals, it boasted a long, pointed rostrum as well as broad, flattened tooth whorls with sharp crowns that could have inflicted painful slicing wounds on its delicate prey. This Helicoprionid is one of the few large fossil animals known from the cold northern reaches of Greenland. Helicoprion and Edestus were some of the cartilaginous fish's first true titans of the oceans, and remain to this day some of the most iconic animals in fossil history. They are prime candidates to show just how well developed and intimidating life before the dinosaurs could be. And they went on to lay the foundations for the cartilaginous apex predators we see in today's oceans and seas. Unfortunately, the Eugenodonts would not be able to survive long into the Mesozoic, as a new form of ocean-going predator, the marine reptiles, would begin to appear on the scene in the wake of the Permian mass extinction. The time of the cartilaginous fish would come, however, and Helicoprion and Edestus's modern relatives are some of the most powerful, secretive, awe-inspiring and unusual fish in the oceans today.